When Walmart first came out with its report this morning, the stock immediately surged. It rallied about 6% in the pre-market. Then it gave it back. What was the initial impression that people had? And then what afterwards did people sort of realize perhaps was not so great?
Oh, thanks for having me. When the results were announced this morning, they had an amazing quarter, which is why the stock rallied in pre-market. All of the numbers were good. Same-store sales were up 9.3%. Ticket was up. E-commerce was through the roof. But as we started to hear from management, really it was that they were flagging, they were showing concern about the sustainability of that pace of sales as we move into third quarter and fourth quarter of this year. And that really ties back to what you were talking about with the stimulus spending.
So we talk about, I mean, when we saw these results out of Walmart, and we've seen this with other of the big retailers here, Jennifer, they've not only benefited from the rise in sales that we saw, but there was actually considerable margin improvement. Was that margin improvement because of cost controls, or was that also just tied to that just outsized gain in sales?
A lot of that margin improvement was due to the outsized gain in sales. They have done a very good job of controlling costs. So Walmart did some corporate restructuring. Other retailers have done the same sort of thing to really try to keep costs as tightly reined in as possible. But when you have such big sales, it really does provide you with a lot of operating leverage and does benefit margins.
What, therefore, next? As we do see still a struggling of any sort of stimulus deal to be agreed upon over in Washington or virtually in Washington, I'm interested as to what can really stimulate the continued growth for Walmart. If it can't be checks sent in the post, are people really going to splash out on going back to school at the moment when many people aren't even going back to school?
Yeah, back to school is a big question for Walmart right now, and I think that there will be good spending. It's just that it's not going to be the same way that we would typically think. So people aren't buying backpacks and they're not buying school supplies because there is this concern that kids are going to end up learning from home for a lot longer than we thought. But instead, some of that money will go into technology, so updated laptops, monitors, things that they didn't necessarily buy at the end of last school year because they thought they were just going to get through a few months, but now looking at a long semester ahead, may decide that they need to upgrade their equipment.
Jennifer, to some extent, Walmart is a type of company that can thrive in multiple economic cycles. So when we're on an upswing, more people are spending. And when things are slowing down, well, perhaps more people want to shop at Walmart because they have low prices. If even Walmart itself is seeing the impacts of this lag where unemployment insurance, that expansion has gone away, is it reasonable to assume that other retail players may be feeling it even worse, places that don't necessarily benefit from the discount, the desire of people to buy at a discount?
You make a very good point in that Walmart really does do well in any economy. The one thing I would say is that even though same-store sales, they said in July, decelerated to 4%, that's still higher than their average, which is just around 3% in the last year and a half. And so even with a slowdown, they're still running at a higher pace. And I think that that's what we're looking forward through the end of the year with Walmart, is that they have that capability to outpace peers in the field. So with your question, yes, I think there are retailers out there who aren't as value-focused as Walmart that may suffer more as the economy, as spending slows down, and especially on the discretionary side.
Well, what about with the shift, though, that we saw, Jennifer, with regards to folks buying more stuff online, doing buy online and pick up in store? Walmart, of course, had already been investing pretty heavily in that model prior to the pandemic. We know that Amazon was a beneficiary of that, and we've started to see a lot of other retailers, though, make that investment in an effort to keep up with the Amazons and Walmarts of the world. Is there any real competition there for those two companies with regards to that model?
Well, certainly Target has to come into the mix, and they have their earnings tomorrow, so we'll see if there's a good read-through from Walmart with regards to Target and their results. But it is true. It's the companies that have been investing in the last 12, 18 months into an omni-channel strategy that are the ones that were able to reap the rewards. And other players who are just starting to invest now may find that they're ceding shares that is difficult to regain because especially with online shopping, once people start a pattern, it's harder to break that pattern and win them back. So we think that that's going to play a very important part of the overall strategy going forward for these big box retailers.
Jennifer, real quickly, so obviously Walmart and other retailers are doing fantastic online, but of course that means they have to pay the companies who deliver goods, and we're seeing that delivery companies on the whole are really starting to flex their pricing power. Last week we had UPS talk about surcharges. Today we had FedEx. Is there going to be some margin erosion as the entities that do that sort of delivery really, and not just for Walmart, but in general, really realize they can sort of take a bite out of some of those profits?
That's a great question, and it is true that as the shipping costs rise, especially for companies like a Walmart and a Target that do play a little bit more to value customers, and they can't necessarily raise their prices much higher in order to compensate for that, that should generate some margin compression. And so even though gross margin for Walmart was up this quarter, we don't think that that's sustainable, and we think that that's going to come back down as we go forward, especially for one of the reasons that you just mentioned, which is the increase in e-commerce.